globally actually, and she was associated with McKinsey and AQR Capital in US before starting Forefront Capital Management, first registered hedge fund in India. Forefront actually got merged with Edelweiss in 2014, and that's how I think Radhika is part of Edelweiss management. Radhika studied a lot actually, as I was just reading her resume. So I'll just read out something actually, Radhika has graduated from University of Pennsylvania with a joint degrees in economics from Wharton School, in addition to computer science from Mood School. I think I am missing something also, but this was too much for me actually. So over to you, Radhika, actually.
Hi guys, good evening to friends in India, and good morning, because I understand there are friends from the United States joining in. So good morning to both of you, and amazing to do this event across time zones. Thank you, Nishant, Darshit Bhai, Jigar Bhai, for having me, to the Leader Care team for doing this. The fabulous thing about the digital age that we live in is that while I do miss coming to Ahmedabad and meeting clients over the cup of tea or coffee, this is probably the fourth event I'm doing today. So my mother was asking me, where all have you traveled? She's like, itne webinar kar rahi hai. I said, no, this is a substitute for my travel. So I started with an event in Calcutta in the morning for a group of Calcutta clients. Then I think I did something, I'm forgetting the job. I did something for Bangalore and Hyderabad at around 11 or 12 o'clock. And then I did something for Mumbai and Pune. And the amazing part of the digital world is now I'm connecting to folks in the US and maybe Ahmedabad and other parts of India. So I have digitally zoomed the world today, and it feels like a very, very productive Saturday. So thank you. This is the last one of the evening. I also have to personally thank this audience and the Leader Care team for giving me this topic. I was very surprised when I was asked to talk about alternative investments. Now, my history is, and thank you for the warm introduction, that this is a topic actually very close to my heart, because in my 15-year career, for 11 years, I have been an alternative investment professional, first in the US. And then when we moved back to start Forefront Capital, it was actually the first registered AIF in India. I went door to door trying to talk to people about AIF and long short, etc., etc. So that's what people knew me for. But then since I joined the mutual fund industry and became CEO for the last 3 years, I've been selling SIPs for a living, and nobody seems to call me to do an AIF presentation or an AIF talk anymore. So I'm very happy that you chose to do this with me, because it's like coming back home for me. It's very exciting. So I'm actually very excited to talk about this topic after a long time, because I am actually an AIF professional first at heart, and you never forget your roots. So what I'm going to do is I'm just sharing my screen. There I go. And I think you should be able to share my screen, see my screen. If there's an issue while I'm speaking, please use the reliable chat window. So what I will do is, and since it's a smaller group, it'll be nice, to take a lot of Q&A on this topic. I really believe it's a very exciting space. I'll give you some perspective on the evolving landscape of alternative investment options in India. Probably the space that has seen the most progress in the last 5 years, very, very exciting space. I'll talk about one of the product offerings that we have worked on for the last 6 years. And then, maybe 20, 30 minutes later, then I would love to take all your questions and thoughts, etc. So, and I'll try and keep the AIF landscape very, very simple, because these things can be as complex as you make them or as simple as you make them. So I'll try and keep it as simple as I can also. So I want to, start with this word alternative investing. And what does alternative investing mean? Because sometimes people assume that alternative investing is, I bought a PMS in India, or I bought an AIF in India, so I have bought an alternative investment. I don't think that is the case. I think an alternative investment is something that is different from a traditional asset class. And what is a traditional asset class? Traditional asset classes are equity, so you buy stocks. Traditional asset classes are fixed income, so you buy bonds, or commodities, so you buy golds. Now, anything that is giving you an experience, and I highlight the word experience, that is different from traditional asset classes is an alternative asset class. And I think that experience is very important. So either the investment has to give you a risk profile that is very different from equities. So for instance, if in a month like March, markets are falling a lot, but your alternative is falling less than equities, materially less than equities, then it is giving you less risk. Or it is giving you returns. Say your traditional fixed income is giving you 7%, but your alternative fixed income is giving you 8-9% because it's taking something different. Then it is alternative. If you are just doing the same equity but doing it on a PMS or mutual fund form, and there's a lot of that also that happens, that is not alternative investing. So alternative investing is defined by the approach, not the platform. There are great alternative ideas, by the way, that I think exist even in some way in a mutual fund platform, and there are a lot of people who run PMS and AIF products that are not alternative. They're just taking what happens in the traditional world and putting it on a PMS or AIF platform. So I think that is very important. And alternative investment is different from traditional investments. And in traditional investments, I run a mutual fund business. When you run an equity mutual fund, that it is relative to the benchmark, and good or bad, it is relative to the benchmark. So if the market is down 25, the best my equity mutual fund will do will be down 20 or 19, or it may be down 30 if I've done a really bad job. And alternative is not about the benchmark. So I think that is very, very important. And I think the last thing in terms of when we think of alt investments is they focus on risk adjusted returns. It's not about the absolute quantum of returns. It's about giving you returns with lower risk. So I think that is the definition for me of what is alternative. And if you were to, so many of you are, or those of you who are sitting in other parts of the globe may know that globally, of course, the assets in the alternative category have really picked up. This is how the numbers look like. Just 1 second, slight issue with my screen. Just 1 second. This is how the numbers for alternative AUMs look like. Global AUM has gone in 2004 to 2020. AUM has trebled in this asset class. And as I said, alternatives exist in various forms globally. Some of it happens on the mutual fund platform, some of it happens in other platforms. But if you look at the bottom row, so the total global AUM is about 37 billion, has gone to 100. Alternatives have gone from 2.5 to 13. So I think that's very important. Alternative and passive are the asset classes that are showing the highest growth. And globally, alternatives account for 10% of the total AUM of the asset management industry. Now, what happens and how do you think, what options are available to you as an investor in terms of alternative investments? Well, I think you can break them into two parts. One is in the public markets and second is in the private markets. How do I define public and private markets? Private markets I would define as things that are unlisted in nature. They are in the private domain. They are investments that are traditionally more long-term. So when you look at private market investments, probably at least 5 to 7 year time horizon, liquidity is definitely not there. And it could be things like private equity, which is investing in unlisted companies. It could be things like investing in venture capital, which is an early stage form of private equity. I think private equity and venture capital, everybody is familiar with. It could be things like real estate. It also could be a very interesting business that we run in another part of Edelweiss, which is called distressed investing, which is, and there's a lot of it going on these days, investing in companies that are literally distressed investments and betting on them to turn around. So this whole landscape exists all the way from distressed investing to real estate, to private equity, to venture capital. On the other side, there is public markets. This is the domain I come from and probably know a little bit better. But this is investing in things that are liquid, listed. The time horizons will be much shorter. Could be 1 year, could be 2 year, could be 3 year. the kind of products you will see. So most popularly, you will see long short funds. Those are pretty popular in India right now. Those are funds that a traditional mutual fund only buys companies and takes a view on companies it likes. An alternative or long short fund will buy companies that it like, but it will also short companies that don't make sense. For instance, I remember there was a phase in our funds where we were constantly shorting companies like Idea, for instance, or Vodafone, etc. So a long short fund is one that buys companies it likes and sells companies that don't make sense to it. There are also other kind of funds out there in the market. There are funds, for instance, that are macro funds. They bet on different markets to do well. So they'll bet on a China doing better versus a Vietnam, for instance, or they'll funds that are commodity funds. They'll bet on natural gas doing better than gold, for instance. There are funds that bet on specific events. So there are funds whose job is to bet on the outcome of mergers and demergers. So the whole world is actually out there once one opens your mind in terms of the kind of investment products that are available today. Not many of these products, however, are available in the Indian context. So all the private market products today are available. On the public side, what you have is long short equities are available, and some amount of event driven funds are available. For instance, on the event driven side, one of the funds that we run, it's a boutique fund, is called Catalyst. So it invests in companies where the management has changed, or the promoter has changed, or there's a private equity infusion, or there's a special situation. So those event specific funds. So that is what is broadly available in the Indian context today. Just to give you a history, and I can take some credit for being part of this history. So the alternative landscape in India, SEBI has done actually a great job of regulating it in a way that works for the investor. I think it's one of the best regulated industries in India. In 1996, the alternative industry was limited to a few venture capital funds. In 2012, SEBI put out the AIF regulations, which was the transformative moment for the AIF industry. Then, now let's go to 2013. So in 2013, 73 AIFs existed in India, 21 in category 1, 37 in category 2, and 15 in category 3. Just to break down these categories, category 1 and category 2 refer to private market AIFs. Category 3 refers broadly to public market AIFs. So category 1 has been restricted to venture capital funds, social funds, things that are broadly good for India, that have social benefit. Category 2 has had private equity funds, real estate funds, etc. Category 3 has had all your long short, public equity, etc. funds. And if you look at 2013, the AUM of this asset class was 1400 crores. I mean, it was non-existent. It was crazy. Come to 2016, there were 219 AIFs with a total AUM of 38,000 crores. Come to later in 2019, we are now sitting on 3.2 lakh crores with 600 registered AIFs. So from an HNI perspective, this asset class has grown since 2013. And how? I mean, I personally remember a time when we got the first Cat 3 license, and even the taxation, etc., on these funds was not clear. Now the landscape has changed completely, so it is absolutely gone mainstream. Just to give you a flavor, again, I covered some of this, but it is worth understanding. Today, there are 3 categories of funds out there in the market: category 1, category 2, and category 3. They have very different profiles, so it is worth understanding in this in some detail. Category 1 and category 2 funds, as I said, are private market funds. The difference is category 1 does the stuff that is socially good. So infra funds, social venture funds, non-banked credit funds, anything in this category usually gets a lot of incentives by the government. Everything else is in category 2. So private equity, real estate. One thing is both category 1 and category 2 are closed-ended funds. So if you are ever putting money in any of these category of funds, Please remember that it is not an open-ended fund where you can take money out regularly, and that rule can't be violated. I run some category 2 funds also. These are closed-ended long-term funds. So just keep that in mind. Some debt funds also run in category 2. For instance, we run a category called crossover, which is pre-IPO funds, companies that are unlisted but about to get listed. That also falls into category 2. You know, the good thing with this fund is that these are closed-ended, as I said. They're not allowed to take any leverage, and there are very tight restrictions on what you can do in each category. So that is that. Okay. The taxation for both these categories of funds, category 1 and category 2, is pass-through. That means the tax is paid at the investor level. You will, when you invest in these funds, you will get a capital gain statement, and you as an investor will have to pay tax. Not very much, except for a few cases, will have to be deducted at the level of the fund. That's important to understand. Category 3 are funds which are liquid, mostly focused on equities. Category 3 funds are also different. Many of you have invested in Indian equity mutual funds or PMS. Mutual funds largely hold long only equities. Category 3 funds can also hold derivatives. Category 3 funds also have the ability to take leverage. So if a customer has given me 1 crore, I can take exposure and positions versus 2 crores. In a mutual fund, if I have 1 crore, my positions are limited to 1 crore. So they can do a few things. They have more flexibility than a traditional mutual fund vehicle. In category 3, you'll have some traditional equity funds, you'll have long short equity funds. I think some commodity funds have also started. Category 3 funds can be open-ended or closed-ended, so you have to check on the specific fund that you are investing. There are not too many restrictions in terms of asset allocation. One thing to keep in mind is that here, unlike your mutual funds in category 1 and category 2, the taxation is at the level of the fund. So the fund will deduct tax and give you net of tax numbers to you as a customer. So that's very important to keep in mind. Compared to traditional investing, tax is something you have to be very careful of and just look at in the context of AIFs, because they have different tax treatments. Finally, let me just do a quick deep dive into a category of public market funds that I like, and that is long short investing funds. And I'll probably spend the next 10 minutes talking about what happens here and what the advantage of running long short funds are. So long short funds are a category of funds that is done on the AIF Cat 3 platform. As I said, when you look at a traditional Indian MF platform, what do? We buy companies we like, and we buy stocks that we think will do well. However, while fund managers are capable of understanding stocks that will do well, we also have the ability to understand stocks that will do poorly. The classic example being something like Idea or Arcom or many other names. There are stocks, you know, where the fundamentals of the business are weak, the industry is going through something. Jet Airways is another example. But in a mutual fund, you can't take those positions because SEBI does not allow you to short stocks. In a long short fund, you can short stocks as well. So that is the capability that you bring to this. The advantage of this is that now, if I'm running a fund, I have the ability to buy Reliance because I like it, but I also have the ability to short Idea. So I can make money when markets are falling, I can make money when markets are rising, and I reduce the overall risk I'm taking in the portfolio. There are also other things that these funds can do. For instance, there is a very vibrant IPO market in India, so you can participate in IPO trades. There are significant amounts of corporate mergers and demergers that are happening, so you can bet on mergers. So a lot of these kind of opportunities that you can do can be done in a long short fund. I already talked about the fact that AIF is a vehicle where you can take leverage. One thing to keep in mind, because it's alternatives, the regulator has kept the minimum ticket size at 1 crore. And unlike PMS, some of you may be investing in PMS. PMS is a by client investment. AIF is a pooled investment like a mutual fund. So the other advantage of AIF is, from a tax and reporting point of view, it actually turns out to be quite straightforward. A little color on category 3 AIFs. This asset class, and that's why I'm happy we got the opportunity to do this presentation today, has actually attracted a lot of interest from Indian investors. If you look at the quarter-on-quarter growth on the left, you can see the kind of asset growth this category has seen. So it's just ballooned, and post the crisis, I think people are really looking at AIFs in terms of Cat 3 AIFs, in terms of the opportunities. The average fund size is now 200 crores. It's not small. And there are a larger number of players, whether it's established AMCs or boutique AMCs, who now have presence in the category 3 AIF space. Finally, I'm going to give you a quick overview of one of our funds. It's Edelweiss Alternative Equity Scheme. I think it was probably the oldest category 3 AIF there. More than a specific product overview, this will also give you a flavor of how these kind of investments work, what their benefits are, what their drawbacks are, etc. So this is a 6-year-old fund. It just completed 6 years of track record. And it is a product that aims to give you an equity-like experience, but with lower volatility. One of the challenges we've always had in the equity market is it's good, but it's very, very volatile. So this is a product that aims to give you an equity-like experience, of course, with lower volatility. And it has a very interesting structure where it's got some core strategies and then some satellite strategies, which I'll walk you through. The idea is that over 2-3 years, you earn reasonable equity return, but there is limited downside and limited drawdowns. And I'll show you some of the outcome of that. This has actually been recognized as one of the best emerging market focused hedge funds. So the way this fund works is the core of it is very similar to what you see on the mutual fund side. It's a long-term strategy focused on buying good quality equities. Then it has got 2 satellite strategies on the orbit. So what you see is satellite strategy 1 is the short strategy. This is aiming to find fundamentally poor companies and sell them. So it's buying good companies, selling poor companies. On the other side, there's a second satellite strategy that is aiming to participate in some of these IPO arbitrage transactions, 3 to 6 months transactions that give you an opportunity to capture a small return and a small upside in the market. So just to summarize, it's got a core, which is good quality fundamental investing. But because there are risks and volatility in equity, it's also got these 2 other strategies. One is a downside protection strategy, and one is a strategy to exploit smaller market opportunities and take advantage of them. To give you a further breakup of how that works, core fundamental equities, the fund has about 18 to 22 holdings at any point in time. And as I said, those are about 3-year holdings. The average exposure you have to these core fundamental equities in your portfolio is about 70 to 80%. The second thing that you have is these short positions. You typically have 5 to 20 positions, companies that have weak fundamentals, but where you can make money. And this is your way to limit downside. The average holding period of these companies is somewhere between 3 to 12 months. And on average, you have 10 to 30% exposure there. So 70% long, maybe 30% short. Finally, you have this bucket of event arbitrage, as I said, open offers, buybacks, IPOs. At any point in time, you could have 4 to 10 of these. And the average holding period, again, is short, could be 1 month, could be 2 months, could be 2-3 months. And your average exposure to these is 10 to 30%. This is a little flavor on how this has looked like over the last 6 years. I think this is one of the funds with the longest track record in this space. What I would advise you to do is look at the right, which is the 2-year rolling performance of the fund. The blue line is the fund. The orange line is the Nifty. The chart is at the bottom. I think the most powerful thing, and if I started this presentation, I said alternatives have to give you something that traditional investments don't give you. Here, if you look at it, the minimum return has been significantly less than the Nifty. So on a 2-year rolling basis, markets have fallen 6%. This guy has been flat. You see that in the chart. The average return has been higher because you've been able to cut the losses and the upside has been better. It's not because magic is happening. It's because compared to a mutual fund, the tools a fund manager has are far superior. In a volatile year, and if you look at the chart on the left, it just gives you a perspective of how the last year, which I think has been one of the most volatile years that you could have had, has been. I think markets have been flat, although they've gone up and they've gone down. But the fund has done reasonably well compared to markets, and obviously it has a much longer track record since inception. I think the second part is I talked about the fact that any alternative investment is focused on risk return. And this is just a few perspectives. When you look at any of these AIF investments, it's very important to see that while it has captured the upside, what has it done in terms of downside protection? So beta is a statistic that we look at. So for every rupee of rise in the market, of course, markets rise 1 rupee, but the beta of this fund has been substantially lower. So it's been 0.6. So it's not as volatile as markets. It's probably about half as volatile as markets. And I think if you look at, when we think of risk, we also think of it in terms of capital loss. So the worst case outcome for the Nifty has been -30. The worst case outcome for this fund has been -19. That is something, I think these two statistics, beta and the maximum loss, are something when you are evaluating any alternative investment, you should definitely look at. The next two are also interesting. Upside participation tells you that when the market moves 100%, how much up does this fund move? So it captures 90% of the upside. Downside participation is the reverse. So if the market falls, then how much of the downside do you capture on average? That is 40%. Again, I think these would be very valuable statistics, not only for this fund, but when you are evaluating any kind of alternative investment. The idea is that an alternative investment should be able to capture a lot of the upside, but provide you a lot of downside participation. This also, I think, gives you a little bit of flavor on how this kind of product could do in various market scenarios. And obviously, I'm using a single fund's return, but it's representative of the category as well. Category data is not as widely available, unlike mutual funds. So what we've done is we've looked at the period from 14 to 20, which is a fairly long period. You've seen rising markets, you've seen stagnant markets, you've seen falling markets, you've again seen rising markets, and you see how markets have done and you see how funds have done. The other thing, if I could point you to the table on the right, you also see how the fund has been able to manage its equity exposure. So in scenario A in early 2014, when markets were good, the fund actually held a lot of long equity positions and it wasn't shorting too many companies because there were not too many companies to short. However, if you look at that period from 2015 through 16, the fund actually had much lower equity exposure. It was 62% exposure because it was finding a lot of companies to short. And then recently, of course, the fund has taken up its equity exposure when markets have rallied. So the fund is a lot more dynamic. I think if you look at this for a traditional equity mutual fund, our numbers will be between 95 to 100 all the time. With that, what I'll do is end right here. I think just to summarize what I've said, I think the alternative landscape is a very fast growing landscape in India. Many categories of funds are available today. They are broadly divided into public market opportunities and private market opportunities. Each of them has a different taxation and return profile. I think when you are looking at any alternative investment, do look at the track record of the fund house and the manager. Do also see that why am I investing in this and what is it giving me that a traditional investment is not giving me, because it's also important to keep your investment portfolio simple. So I think do look at what I'm getting and do try and evaluate. This is a younger industry, so do try and look at funds that have a much longer track record and pedigree in this industry. With that, I'll stop right here and maybe Jigar Bhai and Darshit Bhai, we can take any questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Radhika. I think amazes me because I follow you quite aggressively. So amazes me that how you can be technically so great and also be motivating people so well. So thank you so much, Radhika. We are now requesting our clients to post their questions on the chat box, the most reliable one. In meantime, we've already received a few queries, Radhika. I would like to paste them to all. So obviously the first one is that, could you give a little bit of idea about what would be the taxation for the NRIs, because a lot of our clients are non-resident Indians. So what would be the tax implication for NRIs in this product?
Okay, so it is broadly the same as Indian taxation. Now, I didn't cover Cat 3 taxation in detail, but maybe since this question has come up, I can take it. Taxation is at the fund level, and I'll talk about the category. It is very dependent on what the fund does. For instance, if you have and NRI and domestic taxation are the same, because whether you are an NRI or domestic, we cut tax at the fund level. So that's clear. Okay. Now, if you are a AIF that is only doing 100% long only equities, you will pay equity capital gains. The only difference is in a mutual fund, you will be paying that capital gains yourself. Here, I will cut the capital gains and give you the net of capital gains money. There are second kind of funds which are doing only a FNO. Then your taxation will be fully business income. Now there are funds like ours, which I just showed you, which are blended in nature. So for instance, our fund, I think we give a taxation primer. 70% of the taxation is because 70% of the positions are long holdings. 70% of the taxation is capital gains, 30% is business income. So today that blended rate of taxation works out to be about 15 odd %. So it depends fund to fund. It depends on what the underlying is holding, but it is also at the fund level.
I have a quick question, Radhika. Being a US investor, do I get a K1? Do you guys issue a K1 to your NRIs? That was my question. Because a K1 makes everything very simple from a NRI who's filing taxes in USA.
Okay, most likely we don't issue a K1, but let me come back to you on this, on US investors. Okay. US is always the trickiest one.
Yes, because we have to be careful with FATCA and everything. And that is my primary concern is, I want to make money, but I want to make sure that I pay my taxes and don't get into trouble anywhere.
Okay. We do have US NRIs. Let me just come back on the US one.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so Radhika, the next. Sure. So Shekhar, I'll get back to you as soon as we hear from there. So
yes.
The next one, Radhika, we have is the standard question also is that what is the ideal horizon for the AIF? And what are the ways to generate, actually two questions from the same client, is that the second one is that how do you generate cash flow? Is it in terms of a regular dividend or an interest payout, or how does it go? So two questions.
Okay. Same. So second one, in the case of our fund and most AIFs, we do not pay out cash flow or dividends because it is very tax inefficient. There's no benefit to doing it because if we pay out dividends, we'll pay the full rate of taxation, which you would not want. The way to get cash flows is to redeem units of the fund. If people do need cash flows and they have gains, they should redeem units. And some people, what they do is if they have 10% gains, they just redeem the gains. The first question was time horizon. So time horizon for this particular fund, I'll answer, and then I'll answer for AIFs as a whole. It is really a function of the underlying and the strategy of the fund. This fund, we recommend a 2 to 3 year time horizon. It's equity. It's not 7 years, which is your, traditional MF equity. This one, I think, is in the 3 year kind of ballpark. There are funds, by the way, I used to run a fund which had a 6 month to 1 year horizon. There are funds with 3 to 5 year horizons. So it really depends on the strategy of the fund.
Okay.
Radhika, one other question. You mentioned that these are closed-end funds. So hypothetically, if this is a closed-end fund for 3 years, at 3 years, do I get a lump sum payment payout, or how does that work?
Okay, so Shekhar, thanks for asking that. Let me clarify. So I think that wasn't clear. Half of the category is closed-ended, some of it is not closed-ended. So category 1 and category 2 funds by law are closed-ended. That can't change. Category 3 can be open-ended or closed-ended. The fund I talked about is an open-ended fund. It currently has quarterly liquidity. So every quarter there is a redemption timeline of 15 days. You can give a redemption notice and you'll get your money on T+3. So this is an open-ended fund, just to clarify. Most Cat 3 funds in the market are open-ended funds.
And what is the load?
So there is an exit load on this for 2 years. It's 2% for the first year, 1% for the second year. After that, there's no load also.
And what is your investment charge upfront?
Okay, so we again on the good question on fees. So most funds will not have a setup fee. I mean, it's rare to see setup fees in this category. There is an investment man. So there are three kinds of fees. There is entry load, management fees, and then exit loads. Entry loads are rare. We don't have entry loads in most of our funds here. Management fees on a fund like this, most of the category will be at something like 1.5% management fee and 15% over some hurdle rate. That hurdle rate could be 8%, 10%. Ours is 10%. Compared to your traditional equity MF fee, actually, which is about 2.2, this actually works out in favor of investors because you're paying lower on the fixed side. And then exit loads depend fund to fund. As I said, ours is for a limited time horizon. We just don't want people churning within the first year. There's no upfront setup fee as there is often in global markets.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Shekhar. Hope she's answered. Radhika, one more on the way is that what is the long short fund strategy currently? What are we following on the long shorts?
Okay, so I can't go through position by position,
Yeah,
especially on the short side, because my team tends to be a little tricky on that in terms of disclosure. We hold a basket of broadly diversified funds, about 18 to 20 names on the long side. We had a phase till about March where we were very aggressively shorting companies. I mean, very, very aggressively. We probably had a basket of about 10 to 15 names. Our long short holdings, our short positions then have come down. And now with market rally, we are actually seeing great opportunities to short companies, because what has happened incidentally in the last 3 months is a lot of junk has run up substantially. So the short strategy is not to find overvalued companies, because something is overvalued, it can keep staying overvalued forever. It is to find industries that are cyclically broken and find the weakest player in that industry and short it. That's broadly the approach the team follows. I find a cyclically broken industry like airlines and find the guy who's doing worst and he happens to be expensive and I can short him, or telecom at a phase.
Yeah, sure. So the further one on the same lines, that is there any cap that we build for an exposure in our portfolio on a particular stock? Do we have a cap?
Long only positions usually do not exceed 5%. Sometimes because of market, they can be 6%. The cap is 10% as per AIF regulations. Short positions are very, very small. 0.5%, 1%, 0.2%. We rather hold a basket of more companies and smaller positions.
Thank you. A little more technical question, actually. In fact, it took me by a little googly also. That do we need to open a demat account for NRIs, or we can go in direct investment like like the PMS? We need a demat account and stuff.
No, the good news is this is actually pretty efficient for NRIs. You do not need a demat account. It is an NRI application, so it is more similar. The way you think of AIF for NRIs also is more similar to your MF investing in experience. It's not a single account like PMS. PMS is actually tough for NRIs.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Then we have a question from Mohit. I mean, he's saying that can VC or PE funds outperform the active mutual funds over a 10-year horizon? Considering that they have a high expense ratio and comparatively lesser regulatory controls, is what Mohit is asking us.
Okay, this is a tricky question and I'm not going to give a politically correct answer. So they better outperform actively managed mutual funds over a 10-year holding period. One, because they charge higher fees. Secondly, because they take substantially more risk. And third, because they are locked in. In an actively managed mutual fund, I have daily redemptions and daily NAV, and you guys trouble me if I underperform and all of that. Whether they have is a separate question. So you should demand, if you're investing in a VC-PE fund, at least 5 to 7% above an actively managed fund, at least.
Okay, I hope that answers your query, Mohit. So one more question, Radhika, is what's the difference between a structured note and an AIF? Structured notes and AIF.
Yeah. So a structured note is also some kind of alternative investment. It is a debenture. So you're buying a bond, and that bond's payoffs are basically linked to something. So the bonds payoffs could be linked to Nifty, they could be linked to the price of gold, they could be linked to the price of Reliance. And the outcome, so there are 2-3 differences versus a structured note. One is, in a structured note, the outcomes are very well defined. Ye hoga to ye milega, ye hoga to ye milega, etc. And in AIF, the outcomes are not defined. Second aspect in a structured note, however, is you are taking credit risk of the issuer. So you have to be very careful of who the issuer is. There are cases of issuers going sour without taking names where the capital also disappears. So when the payoff is defined, you are taking risk. The third thing to keep in mind is structured notes are not open-ended in nature. They are closed-ended. So you can't prematurely withdraw a structured note.
Right.
Do you need the NRI to be physically present in India to initiate this investment, or can you? That's not a necessary requirement. Not necessary.
Great. Radhika, so since you know that this is a call happening in Gujarat, and most of our clients are from the land, whether you are a Gujarati because you are born here and you work here, right? Rather than being born Gujarati. So one question, and I cannot let you go off without that question, is Mane ketla malse? You know, what is the expected return is, you know, something which has come to us from 3-4 people out here. So, you know, an expected return, what can a return expectation be if a client is investing in this kind of?
I don't speak Gujarati,
Right.
and I made attempts at it, and I really am terrible at it. But there's a Hindi equivalent called Kitna Degi, so we have that in our Hindi. I think again it depends. I think in a fund like the one I showed you, your return, you should expect to beat large cap funds by a couple of % without having the down. Without, it's not. So don't just look at it as return. So you should beat the large cap category by a few %. And you should have much lower downside. So if the downside of large cap is X, this should be maybe half of X. That is also important. Otherwise, don't do it. If you're not getting half the X on the downside, then don't do it.
Right. So I think that's about it. I don't have any questions in my WhatsApp or in the chat as such. So maybe if anybody has a question, they could unmute and ask. Otherwise, we can officially thank Radhika for the session. So any questions? Any?
Last question from my side.
Yeah.
What will be the long only portfolio strategy? Is this any market bias portfolio, or you can construct a multi-cap portfolio?
No market bias. In fact, it tends to be very multi-cap in nature. It is also not very, very unlike MF. It's not very benchmark obsessed. So you are trying to look for, of course, growth businesses. It's a growth-oriented portfolio. And you're again trying to look for industries that are cyclically strong and leaders in that. But it's not, you know, I mean, typically it will not, it's not a mid and small cap portfolio, but it's clearly not, you know, the top 10 names in the Nifty. So it's very, very multi-cap, and within multi-cap, it can genuinely play all parts of the cap range.
Okay. So I think there is no sector restriction or a market cap restriction in a long only portfolio.
No, there isn't. There isn't. And what I can do, which I didn't cover, is Jignesh, we can also send across the fact sheet for this one, which has a lot of detail.
Okay.
Sure, Radhika, we'll do that.
Yeah, great. This sounds good. I think we don't have any other questions. So I think the session, in fact, actually has gone very well. Short and sweet, as people would have liked it. And we got some very good questions, considering our favorite question, which I asked the last one. So great. And I once again thank you, Radhika, for being us this evening and considering the 4th session for the day. So, and that too on a Saturday. For sure, the current time doesn't have any great Saturday evening plans, but as it is, you know, thank you so much, Radhika, for this evening. And like to thank all our clients and friends who took this time out for us and to joining us. And we, as usual, we'll try to share the updates of this session. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so very much, Radhika. On behalf of Jigar and Darshit, I thank you all to join.
Okay, guys, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Radhika. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.